Hello and welcome to another video. Today, I'll be taking you on the journey of how I made this costume corset for my most recent Poison Ivy cosplay. This project combines my two truest loves, corsetry and Poison Ivy. In fact, it was Poison Ivy herself who first introduced me to the world of corsetry, and I have since made many costumes inspired by her. This time, however, I wanted to do my own take on her classic leafy look. So, let's get started. As with all things more complicated than one or two pieces, it's important to start with a pattern. For this project, that's one I drafted based on an extant 1880s corset. You have in fact seen this once before, and you can check out that video here. And I have also adapted it for a Poison Ivy inspired look in vivid green silk dupioni. Clearly, I really do like Poison Ivy that much. First up for this project, I cut out the matching center front pieces from a thick linen canvas. It's quite a rough fabric and very strong, but certainly not my favorite with which to work. However, it is perfect for this project, and wherever possible I try to use up leftover fabric, so in order to save on cost, I used up this. Next up was to put in the busk. With patterns I have used many times and am confident will fit, putting in the busk is one of the earliest steps. So here's how I did it this time. First, I laid the linen atop some interlining fabric. For the loop side of the busk, I marked out the placement of the loops, then put right sides of interlining and canvas together, and stitching down the center front seam, left open these spots for the loops. I could then push the loops through and fold the linen and interlining around this half of the busk, wrong sides together, and top stitch everything down as close as possible to the busk. For the matching side with the posts, the process was a wee bit different. First, I used the loop side to mark out where the posts would push through the linen. Punching a small hole in each spot, I could then lay this piece atop some interlining and stitch all the way down the center front seam. Then I folded the two pieces wrong sides together, slipped in the busk, pushed the post through, and top stitched it down as I had done with the loop side. After this, I cut out the rest of the pieces with interlining to match, then flatlined each linen piece. This was the result. Since I knew I would cover the whole thing with leaves, I actually had the luxury of scribbling all over my linen. Next, I seamed everything together, starting from the center back and working toward the front. There's not really a correct order for this, I just felt like doing it this way. Then, with all the pieces joined, I clipped and pressed the seams, and this was the result. Grommets were next. Much of the time I set my grommets even before joining the center back to the rest, but for this corset I knew I'd be making some modifications to the shape of the upper edge, so I left off doing it until this point. But grommets must be done at some point, so here you can see me setting them with a mallet, tool, and die, as well as an anvil. Now here she is at this stage. Notice how much shape she has, even without any boning. But boning channels do have to go in, and that's what I did next. First, I marked out the desired width of each using a marker. Again, as this layer would be completely covered with leaves, I could scribble all over it. With everything marked, I top stitched along this line. Rinse and repeat until you have all your desired boning channels, insert your bones, and presto, corset. This allowed me to do a quick fitting test, after which I made very minor adjustment to the bust, which you can see me poking at here. Lastly, I didn't bother with either binding or proper hemming since, again, leaves. All I did was stay stitch along the top and bottom edges to prevent fraying. Leaf time. This was just a matter of layering. I don't have a lot of footage since it was just the same process over and over again. Glue a leaf, glue another leaf. Thought I'd forgotten to line? Never. I never forget to line, especially when I'm using a fabric this rough. It was definitely a mistake to wait until this point to whip in my lining, but I just couldn't resist the leaves. All I did here was cut and seam the same pieces as the linen and interlining out of a soft thrifted polyester, fold the raw edges under towards the inside, and whip everything down by hand. Now, this corset is part of a larger costume, so here's how I made a few other things. First up, a flower crown. I started with a cheap headband. I also bought a dozen velvet roses, and though this part felt quite cruel, ripped off the leaves and chopped the flower clean off the stem. Then all I did was hot glue them to the headband. For extra texture, for some of the roses I ripped off a bunch of petals to make smaller, more delicate flowers. Not to worry, however, all those petals I harvested I used to make some of the roses even larger. I also made a pair of matching shoes. For this, I picked up a pair of second-hand shoes at the thrift store. After cutting off some unnecessary decorative bits, you guessed it here, glued on leaves. This is the process in more detail, the same as on the corset and other leafed pieces. And here are the shoes. Crown, corset, shoes. What else? Oh yes, I also made a leafy bustle, a collar, a pair of underwear to go under the corset, and a set of fans. I love feather fans, and I had made a pair for a previous Ivy, so this time I wanted to do something a little different with them, so I made floral fans. Now here is the look all together. I'm quite pleased, I must say. I love both the things that are similar and the things that are different in the processes between cosplay and historical costuming, and I can't wait to make more cosplay-focused videos. Keep your eyes peeled for this costume, by the way. You might spot her in person at Montreal Comic Con, and if I can get my act together, there might even be a vlog following the actual event. But until then, thank you for joining me. Take care, and I'll see you next time.